Hello, and a warm welcome to listeners and viewers. I'm Joseph from Zuma Recruitment. Our team works in the world of recruitment for data analytics, insights, and engineering, supporting tech businesses and professionals in the Berlin region. Today, for our Data for Good podcast, I'm joined by Alexander Staubmann, Team Lead Data Intelligence with Bonial in Berlin. Today, we're going to be exploring automation for data analytics. Welcome, Alexander. How's it going today?
Hi, Joseph. Thanks for the nice introduction. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a nice little conversation to a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, an omnipresent topic. So yeah, looking forward.
Awesome. And I would suggest a really practical topic as well that people can get their heads around, they can understand. So yeah, looking forward to it as well. Before we do get into today's topic, as I do with all guests, could you start by telling us how you first connected with, how you first got into the world of data?
Gladly, sure. So for me, I would say my path into data IT/tech was quite the conventional one, I would say. So I did study Wirtschaftsinformatik, so that in English that would be informatics plus economics. So if you want to put it like this, and I would say also during school time I was always more gravitating towards the mathematics and to the extent also chemistry and physics, so all the subjects with some kind of figures in the background. So that's why I would say that the groundwork was already laid out in my DNA, so to say. So it was kind of natural to then continue or follow that path, and I can definitely say this was the right choice. So I listened to myself. And still to this day, I'm super happy and astounded by the vast array and possibilities you can still uncover. We're still uncovering, like actually on a weekly basis, you could almost say. So
it's a great linear path you've taken, and you've noted in your studies the connection between business or economics and data, which is, to use your words, omnipresent, ever present.
Yes.
How about from your studies to now? What has been the direction of your involvement with data?
So I think I started. I've always been working like during my studies, but at the end of my master's, for last year I've already worked for a company, but there it was more revolving around the business part of my studies. So as I said, it was economics and informatics. So this one was more focusing on the business part, administration, organization. And during my studies, I was busy anyway. So, but at the end, I definitely realized or knew before the end already, this is not the focus area. My focus area should not be my focus area. So I moved directly then to IT data related role.
Interesting. So your passion led you, it seems.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Thank you for sharing. So let's open up today's topic, automation for data analytics. We see automation all around us in our daily lives, with tech especially. You only have to look at various home automation devices and even automation devices and mechanisms in cars as well. Could you define automation in the context of data and perhaps some of the tools used in your world?
Yeah, sure. So for us, or for me, or for us, automation or is like a sub part of the whole data thing. So for us, we kind of try to group we try to define big clusters. One would be the data analysis part, one would be the data reporting part, and then also, like in our case, data engineering parts. So I would subsumize the automation mostly under the reporting part, but to put it more in a general context, me or us, automation is everything that is a recurring process. So we don't really need to define the process itself now. That can be fully handled by, let's say, a computer, a machine, or whatever. So a recurring process where I do not have any manual interference. So things that run in the background, more or less, or pick up on certain triggers, and then the trigger executes the next step. So those are all small puzzle pieces of automation. So, but in one sentence, it's a recurring process that usually does always the same process steps. And now it's up to you to define the different process steps. Of course, you cannot like apply an automated script or tool onto everything. You need to kind of tweak the parameters, but the idea stays the same. It's a recurring process that is supposed to do the same with hopefully the same outcome without any manual interference.
And with that, thinking about teams and their adoption of automation, they can look at the recurring or repetitive processes that their people are going through, and somebody like you could get involved to help automate that.
This is the repeating part, or the recurring part is already a very good signal word. So where your alarm bells should already ring, and you think, okay, I might do something here in this regard. So I guess this is the most important signal word.
And going into the data technologies a little bit, what are some of the tools that you use?
This was my next part. So super. I wouldn't call it basic, but it's standard. It should be a default for us data analysts. I mean, we are communicating mostly, or I hope, a lot with databases. So I think it goes pretty much without saying that you need at least some SQL language. So it doesn't really matter now the syntax, but you need to be able to extract the data that you want, basically. So very simply speaking, and this is done via SQL.
So a company getting into data automation can't be using Excel and have these expectations.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you have like I don't know, 3 rows in your database, then it's fine to do it with Excel. But if you have millions and 100 millions of events that need to be processed every day and pre-processed and aggregated and put into the right shape, I think you cannot really live without some form of database. So whether it's a data warehouse or you store everything in S3 buckets in the cloud, this is then like the engineering part in the background, but yeah, it definitely makes sense too. So my suggestion would always, so I think a data analyst feels very much at home and is very happy and comfortable if there's some form or some sort of data lake that you can tap into. So yeah, this is like the default standard thing. And then additionally, I would at least recommend, so might be a gray zone for some companies, at least for us, it's not the case, some programming language. So in that regard, I have a small story. So when I started here, actually, all the processes that were, or pretty much the entire architecture was written in R. And I was like, yeah, great. I just have written my master thesis in R, so let's continue. But even already when I started, they told me, yeah, we are going to convert everything into Python. And I thought, okay. Also great, of course, because then I can learn a second language, which is great. And since then, so for the past years, we've I would say written a pretty extensive and expensive architecture, not just automation architecture, but all sorts of different processes in Python. So of course, it always depends on the company size and the business model, but from my point of view, I would say that programming language is, yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then additionally, you have tools on top of that, like, for example, we're using Airflow, something called Airflow, which is the orchestration tool that is run in the background, that is connecting to all the different APIs and pushing everything in a data lake. But this is also mainly written in Python, or at least the scripts, the DAGs that other processes are written in Python. So it's kind of unavoidable, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I come across people like yourself at leadership level and at senior level who have mostly a very strong background in Python, sometimes a background in R as well. Are there any other programming languages for the benefit of juniors coming into the data world? Are there any other programming languages that lend themselves well to automation?
I guess at the end of the day, you can automate, I guess, with pretty much any language. So what I'm also using a lot is like batch file. So we're using a lot of batch files, or so like the Linux programming language, which I would say takes it even one step further. So you don't even have to open your Python IDE. So you just double click on a batch file, and then it runs in the background. Doesn't need the memory cache and all of that. But I would say this is maybe not the best entry level. But I think you're actually good with Python. So I think it has a good entry hurdle. So not too high, but of course, as especially with SQL, it has a very high ceiling. So I mean, pretty much for SQL, select from where. But if you check out the documentation, or like your syntax documentation, you will come across some pretty mind-bending functions. And if you can apply them in an efficient way, then that's great. Of course.
Excellent. And it's very accessible, Python, for juniors and new people coming into the market. So that's good advice for them. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Automation.
Yeah.
Putting it in context, and I want to look at some of the benefits if a company does want to transition further and automate much of the data that they use. What are some of the benefits?
Yeah, so I think that the main benefits, or the most evident ones, are certainly insane time gain, and of course connected to that, human resources costs, and but the size of the time gain depends, of course, on how many reports or how many automated processes do you need, what's the business model of the company. Do you actually need anything like that at all? So if I provide a software, you might even think that like a reported or automated reporting structure is not really necessary. So it really depends on your use case, I would say, and this is also a very important aspect. So just because automation is great and it's fancy, and I love it, and a lot of people love it, I know it, doesn't necessarily mean you need to blindly automate everything. So I think over time you generate your own break-even point measure, I would call it. So by case, you would say, okay, can this process be automated? Yes, no. Does it make sense to automate it? Yes, no. How quickly can I automate it? Yes, no. Do I need it like by tomorrow and then never again? So it would already be invalid for an automation. So I think it's very important to step like a half step back and think, does this even fit into my automation thought? So you kind of can have your checklist, let's say, and say, okay, recurring process, check. Number of instances I can apply it to is more than, I don't know, 5, check. But again, it depends on mainly on the company's business model, I would say. So for us in our case, going back to the values and benefits, I think over the last years it has saved us I would almost say months of manual work. Maybe I can give you a bit more details, so that you have some kind of understanding in what size or range we're talking. So for example, I did some number checks, and for example, on a weekly and monthly basis, we create 500 to 600 different data files. So you can imagine, yeah, of course, I can I can do it manually. That's for sure. But I would probably need 3 people working only on that for the entire month. Or you just don't even think about it because it's already done for you. That's why I'm saying it's actually the automation or reporting part is only a sub part of our entire workload here. And the more of that part you can automate, the better, of course. So
and automation doesn't mean that they won't see it again. They're actually using the data that's gleaned and gained from that automation.
Exactly.
So from what I am getting, it seems like businesses should do a strong needs analysis.
Yes, I would say so, yes.
Before looking at all the bright lights of automation and investing in it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant by you shouldn't blindly just automate because it's fancy and it's fun. And I can definitely tell you it's fun to when you have a huge pipeline with 5 different parts, and then you push on one end, and then like a minute later or so you get the result. It's great fun, of course. But yeah, it's a very good point, the necessity analysis, which mainly then comes from the business point of view. So simply speaking, does your business actually need it? Yes or no? So this would most likely be the first layer. So if it's not needed at all, or if it's not leveraged or used, then I mean that doesn't mean you cannot do it, but it's probably wiser to invest your time on something else then.
Understood. With that, following that needs analysis, and a company, let's say, for example, is going to see great benefits in terms of what you said about time and about human resources.
Yes.
Are there any other benefits? Like I can think of extra benefits from the time saving.
Yeah, so you definitely have that sense of consistency. So I wouldn't say that all the process and everything is completely bug free, but if you train a process to have the input A and give me the output B, you can run this process in a loop for 10,000 times and will always be the same result. But I'm willing to bet that if you put a human in front of the computer and tell them, please do this 100,000 times, there might be the one or the other mistake. So that's definitely also a part is I would say the consistency and so like your conscience is free is worry free of thinking, oh, was this actually created? Did I have to do this? Is this correct? Do I need to double check? Because under normal circumstances, if your process is properly engineered, it will most likely be correct. So of course we cannot automate.
There's the consistency, but there's also the data quality.
Yes,
you're removing that potential for human error.
Exactly. And maybe let me detour for 1 minute on that. So even one step further before you think of, well, now I'm starting to automate this and that. It's super important, going back to our nice data lake, it's super important to have a consistent and a database, or consistent and complete database you trust in. Let's call it you can trust. So it's otherwise you would fall into this GIGO trap, so this garbage in, garbage out. So if your input is wrong, then your output is most likely also wrong. So it's super important to have a stable database, and then if that's the case, then you can start thinking, okay, do I need that? And then if I need it, then I can implement it. So there's some kind of steps to follow, and it all starts, of course, with the data quality. So I think this is the pivotal part of it all.
The other thing about inputs and outputs being true and of quality is the availability of that data. You mentioned the time saving. There's time saving at both ends. There's time saving in terms of automating things, and there's time saving in terms of what they get out. People being able to see their data in real time, available right now.
Exactly. So this is actually was one of the visions from from our side with regards to reporting / automation. So so if you follow or if you kind of depict a quite straightforward request on that, so you could actually jump the queue by like 5 or 6 steps. You can, because you have to imagine the stakeholder or whoever the requester, let's call the person, has to set up the request by, I don't know, sending the email or creating the ticket directly. Then you need to be available. You need to check it. Then maybe the briefing wasn't accurate enough, so you have to double check. Then you need to do it, and you need to send it, and you need to open it, and you need to check it. So our vision was always, before all of this process starts, look in your folder. It's probably already there. So this is the ultimate goal of it all.
Yeah. Another one of those needs analyses too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've determined from our needs analysis that we're going to see benefit from automating.
Exactly. Yes.
Seemingly, you have done this in the retail shopping domain.
Yeah.
Could you give us a bit of insight into what you have done in terms of automation? Obviously,
yes,
no
yes.
commercially sensitive information, but
yeah, I'm trying to describe it as generically as possible. But yeah, yeah, it depends. As I might repeat myself, but yeah, it depends on your business model. In our case, it was anything else than automating a large chunk of the reporting world, I would say, would be yeah, unthinkable, I would say, because yeah, it depends on the business model. In our case, it's, if you break it down, let's say simply, so the customer pays for exposure for his content, and we grant that exposure. But at the end, the customer would of course like to know, like get some kind of a resume. So yeah, simply one historical reporting of historic data, I would say. And because for them, follow-up steps would be, of course, depending on data or the quality of the campaign, I shift my budget into that direction or not. So in our case, the whole reporting or client reporting is a huge part. As I said, we create 500, 600, 700 files per week, per month, since we have a lot of clients, and all clients have different demands. And the more flexible and dynamic your architecture is, the more ground you can cover. So we do have some kind of a default templates, but since it's written in such a dynamic way, you can quite easily plug in different modules to satisfy special needs, I would say.
New modules.
Yeah,
would be new features, new ideas.
Yes, exactly. So for example, if you look at the reporting pipeline, it starts with file creation and also like the demand, then the file creation. But the file creation depends on a couple of parameters. So should it be daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, after the end of a campaign? So those are parameters that you can tweak. And the file creation could be an Excel file, could be a PDF, could be a PowerPoint. And then, of course, the client wants to actually receive the data. So then you have the data export. Is it per email? Is it on an FTP server? Is it on something else? So you have those modules that I'm talking about. And those you can kind of change and swap however you want. So you can say Excel per email, PowerPoint per FTP. And it's like little puzzle pieces that you can swap as you see fit.
The customer at the end wouldn't notice. They wouldn't see. They get a personalized outreach.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm getting an impression of the kind of automation that you implement. Could you give us an impression or an idea of where data automation is going in your industry? What do you think the the future is, or the emerging trends in online retail data automation?
So I think we don't even don't even have to make it dependent on the industry. So I think a lot of just probably in any company, a lot of processes that are being done manually because they were growing over time historically. So like we have always done it like this is a typical explanation. So those things can already be automated. But when it comes to for us, for example, yeah, so our market is pretty dynamic, I would say, and shifting and adjusting pretty quickly. So we need to be able to adjust quickly as well. So by already building as I mentioned, a dynamic pipeline or dynamic processes, we are able to do that. Yeah, but of course, these days in something like inflation, high energy prices are extremely omnipresent topics, and we need to be able to read the demands before they even happen, and might already be able to implement processes based on that. So when they start appearing, we're already we say, yeah, we are ready.
I think about the digitization of the retail world and moving away from paper and everything becoming
Yes.
digital.
Yes.
What is going to be the future then?
Yeah, so for us, we hope, of course, digital only. It's not just because this is where our business is founded, but it's, I mean, you cannot deny also the ecological effects of huge printing brochure companies and the waste mountains they generate. I always remember when I was a kid and was coming home from school, I always noticed all the letterboxes filling so being overloaded with printed brochure, and you took them and threw them directly away. So this is just super inefficient, way, huge waste,
untargeted as well.
Untargeted as well. Exactly. So
which automation helps to do, right?
Exactly. So automation also helps to identify target groups in this case. So when we're talking about targeting. So you don't only have to, let's say, show your content nationwide, but you say, okay, let's say in the north of Germany, this product is more popular, which I saw by looking into data. So we distribute or we show that content primarily in the north of Germany. So as a simple example. Yeah.
How did automation for analytics evolve during and following the pandemic, with everybody being held at home?
Good question. So I think we were always pretty heavy and interested in that topic. So also before the pandemic, we started looking more and more into that. So I wouldn't say that in our case the pandemic has been a particular trigger, but yeah, maybe there has been even more emphasis on that because as we defined in the very beginning, it's a recurring process, so not really much changing. So the idea, or at least our idea, is to automate as much as possible so that we can shift our focus on complex analysis, for example, or maybe even some more engineering heavy topics that need more manual or human input. So if you have an analysis, that's something, so you would mostly require a human input, so like a data analyst to extract the correct information. But for reporting like historical data, you wouldn't necessarily need that. But from our side, it was always a pretty important topic. And as I said, the need of the company always demanded to have a strong reporting or automation architecture.
I see. So you're already in a safe, stable place in terms of having data that's accurate, available,
yes,
and of a high quality, real.
Yes. So what we're doing now is mainly really getting rid of the last 1-2% that hasn't been automated to some extent, to some extent. So this is then the goal, and then we can shift. So then we only have to like maintain this architecture and can shift our focus on analysis, on adding new features, creating new tools, maybe even infuse some data science into our work. Yeah, so this is also always in the back of our minds.
Awesome.
And then yeah, sorry.
No, please.
I also wanted to talk about one particular thing we've created. So it's like, I would say it depends, or it builds upon the whole automation or database, but it's like a semi solution, which maybe the viewers find interesting. So it's something we call the data center internally, but it's a self-service center where you can within 30 seconds to 1 minute create your own reports, basically. So whether be it Excel, PDF, or even PowerPoint. And going back to
when did this come? When did this? Yeah, sorry. When did you introduce this?
This was actually introduced almost 2 years ago, I would say. Of course, in the first iteration. Since then, we've updated it tremendously. I would say you can cover so many different reporting aspects, and maybe also detour back to the technologies we need. So I would definitely recommend to have some kind of a Git knowledge. So in order to communicate with repositories, so we own our own repositories on which the data center, or like the self-service center, is built. So just a small side note. So going back to one of your questions, which was the benefit and value. This is also like an intermediary solution where very customized or specialized reports that are not part of the automation pipeline can be created in an instant, so to say.
And created by who?
By anyone using it, basically. So by it's company-wide open, so to say.
Hence the self-service nature of it.
Exactly.
So it really does, if I understand correctly, it's putting data automation in the hands of the non-data user.
Exactly.
And non-data professional.
Exactly. And since we kind of own all of the entire process, so not just this in this case it's a Flask app, also written in Python, by the way. Since we also own the database in the background, we know we trust that whenever a data is, or a data frame or data set is created, we know it's correct, because we also own the database behind it. So yeah, so we have again a worry-free conscience. So if you pull the data, it will be correct, and that's why everyone, also not a tech-savvy person, can use it. Of course, it's built in the most intuitive way. Yeah,
which is fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm sure getting UI and UX developers involved in that has been helpful, because
actually we did it all by ourselves. So we didn't. Yeah. So we also took over the dev part, basically. So
I see. Sorry, of course, the data professionals can be trusted to make things intuitive for the non-techies.
Exactly.
And it's an important evolution, having these self-service centers.
I think so too.
It's about bringing data central to a business, and to get everybody within the business thinking in a data-driven way. Yeah, really helpful.
In data we trust, right?
in data we trust. Yeah, yes. True. There's no other truth, right?
Yeah.
In the interest of time,
Yeah.
I would like to move on to our next and final topic, one that again we ask of people in your position, in a senior position, about career advice that you would give to data professionals.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want to tie that into perhaps the learning of various data automation tools or data automation mindset, but what advice could you share?
So in this regard, I would like to really focus a bit more on the mindset part, but maybe just to summarize the tech part in a couple of seconds. So really, when it comes to technologies, SQL, programming language, and then preferably something like some kind of a command. So being able to work with command shells, writing batch files. So just leveraging all of the things you have. So Power BI, if you're using that for your visualizations. So this is really like the necessary technological part. But my advice or my focus, I think, has over time shifted a bit more and more towards having some sort of a global business mindset, global business brain. So it's especially in our field as data analysts or what we're doing, actually, I wouldn't even call us data analysts anymore because we're doing heavy engineering. We have our databases, our own, so we have our web apps. So it's like we're pretty broad spectrum. But when it comes to
end-to-end analytics and engineering.
Exactly. And when it comes to that, it's of course fine if you can work with all of that, but you always need to think in a business sense. So you're working, like, I guess mainly, or most of you will be working or are working in a private company, or maybe you even found your own company. Then I think it's of the utmost importance to always connect your work with the, let's call it, greater goal of the company. So it's great if you can write super tricky Python scripts, but if it's not needed so if it doesn't bring any added value to your work, to your stakeholders, to the company, to growing the company, then you have kind of missed the point. So I think it's super important, especially for us data, tech, and IT people. I think there's a prejudice of like the developers who just sitting in front of the computer and don't look up for 8 hours and then close the computer, go home, don't talk or work. I think it's super important that you somehow transcend the boundaries of your department. So you shouldn't stay just in your own area that you can have influence on, but always need to be aware of the let's say, call it the supply chain of the company. So if one thing happens at end A, and you should already be able to connect the dots, and not just one dot, but maybe even 3, 4, 5 dots. And then underneath all of that is the actual implementation of your processes. So if you are able to I like to call it like applying an X-ray vision. So when we get requests for let's call it just a task or a bigger project, when you read it, by the end of reading your email, you should already have preferably the solution in mind, and then it just comes about to the implementation. Then you have a huge toolbox, and I would say also with experience, you will pick the tools from the toolbox which get the job done in the most efficient way. So this business aspect actually of a tech or data person is almost as important as the technical part. So
your comments match what previous guests on the podcast have said, that the human skills are almost or equally as important as the data skills.
I would say so.
I particularly like your comment about having a global business mindset, and viewing the work you do with an X-ray lens, and also for data professionals to start considering the work they do.
Exactly, because you don't want to work into the blue, basically. So you want to
into the blue. So consider the relevance.
This makes sense. Yes, no. I mean, just because it's fancy and cool and you would like to do it, but if it's not needed or doesn't go anywhere, then yeah, maybe do it in your free time, or I don't know, check it on the weekend or in the evening. But yeah, this dimension always needs to be taken into consideration.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah, a lot of advice for juniors and even intermediates coming into data to start considering, particularly around mindset and other non-technical skills.
Yes, and maybe sorry for interrupting. One last sentence. What's also super important, I know you cannot really teach that or learn that or latch onto it, but I think when you decide to go into that direction, I think it's also quite important to bring a certain inherent motivation or passion with it. So you should really think at the end of the day, when you've written scripts or have had your presentation for your stakeholders, you should really think something like, "Oh, this was great," and did a good job, and you pat yourself on the shoulder to some extent. So I think this is one of my main so one of the main things I'm looking for when, for example, hiring new team members. Is like really the first pillar would be your passion. You're passionate about it. So when I'm working and talking to you, you really feel, okay, this person does it because they really think it's great. And then of course hand in hand goes with the tech skills. But my assumption is the more passionate you are, the higher your learning curve is. And then of course
also
you have
motivation.
Exactly. And then as a third pillar or so, you have the human skills, like your presentation skills, as I said, the knowledge of the business, your business brain. So I think it's quite a broad spectrum we're covering as data analysts, data professionals. So yeah, and always open for improvement, always happy to learn, always always the status quo. So you should always evaluate the status quo. So where are we? What can be done better? And I tell you, everything can always be improved. Of course, you can reach some sort of a ceiling, but I guess there's always level for improvement.
And as businesses change, you should change with that business.
Of course, yes.
Keeping in mind your notes about the
Exactly.
data work you do being relevant.
Exactly. You should be open to change and not kind of stuck in your processes. As I said, I've done this for 5 years or so. This is not the really the mindset. I think that will help you prosper.
Yeah, learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of the best learners, actually.
Yeah, fantastic. Alexander, thanks very much for not just your insights about data automation, but also your advice and sharing your journey with us. It's been an education for me, and I'm sure it will be for our data community based around Berlin as well. I would ask anyone who's enjoyed listening or watching or has any questions or feedback, please let us know. If it's any questions, myself or Alexander, I'm sure on the technical side we'll be able to answer. And yeah, if there's any things that we can talk more or less about, then yeah, that'd be warmly appreciated as well. But for now, I will sign off and I will leave you guys to it. Thanks very much, Alexander.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Hey, welcome. All right. See you soon and see you next time. Ciao. Ciao, ciao.